Hey y'all, this is Luke, and we're back with another episode of building a self-hosted analytics service from scratch. Forgive me, viewers, for I have sinned. It has been 3 months or 3 weeks since my last stream. Wow, 3 months would be really bad. As penance, I'll try and stream longer today, is what I would like to say, but I don't really know how long I'll have. We'll see what happens. So we're going to start off by running the app here. And I don't really remember what we were working on. Although now that I said that, it's kind of coming back to me here. Okay, so let's localhost 3000. We're going to log into our app. It always takes a second the first time because it's got to compile it. Okay. Log in. I think the password, I think I had set it to foobar for testing. Yep. Okay. So here we've got our app this is some test data that we generated. And we were working on this other page, this events page here. So what have we got going on? Basically, it's a table of all of the events. And there's a lot of problems with this page, as you can probably tell right off the bat. We kind of wrapped up last time with something functional, but not really complete, if that makes sense. And the idea here is we can see the user ID, which is this number, the date that the event happened, the URL, the time for the event, which is how long the user was on the page, the hostname and user agent, and properties associated with the user agent, and also the referrer, if there is one, would show up here as well. So we want to adjust this to make it more not crap looking, basically. And there might be some other things we want to add, like pagination, because right now it loads every single event within the look back window, which is important to note. This page is automatically filtered by this look back window. If I adjust this to 7 days, there are no events in the past 7 days, so there's nothing on the page. Okay, so, and we kind of created this little mock-up here of what we want it to look like, and that's sort of what we based this on. But there's some problems with what we have as a result here, I think. It feels too cramped is one problem. There's not a good distinction between the rows. Like obviously you can tell the difference between the rows, but I kind of want it to be a little bit more visually distinct. And maybe even a little wider looking at it now. And just kind of more polished overall. So let's give a shot at kind of improving the UX of the page a little bit. Let's see if we can even find the page in our code here first. Events page, there we go. So in here we've got our event row, which is kind of the thing that has this main chunk here. And those event rows are contained within this div. Which is fine. I kind of wonder, let's open shadcn UI again. Just take a look at what our components are here. Is there a divider component? No, there's not. I'm just going to implement my own little divider here. So probably for each of these, we might even put a separate divider. Does that make sense? I think that might make sense. in order for that to work, we're going to need to do like a fragment here. And then we would do a divider, which is just going to be a div with class name, border bottom, or border B1, or is it just border B? Let's just see what that looks like. Okay, so now you see we've got these borders in between them. And, you know, we kind of want some margin around this, right? Sort of the idea. So this could have like M2 to give it some spacing. And I wonder if we actually look at one of these borders here. Yeah, I guess that's right. Seems fine. And color-wise, I actually don't hate that gray. So the other thing about this, though, is there's going to be an empty, like a border at the bottom that we don't necessarily need. So we could just fix that like this. Kind of odd, but we can look at the index and say, hey, if this is the last index, then don't show the border, is what I'm thinking. So it could be I equals sorted events length -1. And that. So I, is a 0 index length index into the array. So for the last element, the index is going to have the number of the length of the array -1. And now if we look at the bottom, oh yeah, it should be not equals. Yeah. Now if we look at the bottom, there's no border. Yeah. So we're kind of just making this gap between them. The other thing is I want this to be a little wider, I feel like. So that's configured here. If I did XX or 2XL, right? Refresh it. Did that do the thing? 2XL? Yeah. Does that seem wide enough? That's probably wide enough. And this, yeah. Okay, cool. So then I kind of want to, first of all, we don't need all these significant figures on the seconds here. I kind of want to make this less visually busy, is what I'm thinking. And we'll just take that one step at a time. So first of all, this duration divided by 1,000, we're going to take this and we're going to do dot to fixed, I believe is what we want, because we don't really want exponential. And we'll just have 1 digit. Okay, because we don't really need to know thousandths of a second. We don't really need to know hundredths of a second. Arguably, we don't even need to know tenths of a second, right? And really, we should probably fix this formatting to be more more better. let me see here. So if I look at our libraries here, I don't believe we're using a date library. I think I thought about this a bit last time as well. Yeah, I don't see a date library. So I'm going to probably install one just to help us with the formatting here. And we're going to use this thing called datefns. So I kind of like the datefns library because it operates on dates, which it talks about here. So unlike Luxon or Moment, which have their own date types and you have to convert to and from them, which is fine, but a little bit annoying. Datefns operates directly on dates. It's also easier to, what do you call it? Like trim unused functions. I don't remember what that's called at the moment. Tree something. But anyway, it's easier to import only the functions that you actually need, which can reduce the size of your final bundle. Tree shaking. I figured if I looked here, it would say it somewhere. Yeah, tree shaking. Okay, so let's just quit this and do fun install datefns, right? Yeah, datefns. I always like to double check the library name just in case it's something different and somebody typo squatted or whatever. They're like real library and then I'm installing the wrong library. Don't want to do that. Any case, install datefns. Cool. Alrighty, so now we can format this seconds thing better probably somehow. And we kind of want to use something that's going to format it as a duration. Like this. Now, we don't want it to be this vague though. So something like this is better. I wonder what the difference is between that and format duration. Okay, so the duration is accepting this duration object, whereas distance is accepting two dates. So this is going to be what we want to use. And the only thing about this, though, is we don't want the full string, I feel like. Like, we don't want it to say seconds. We want it to just say, like, S. Right? But let's give it a shot. So, format distance strict is what this thing is called. And we can just put this up here. Const duration equals format distance strict. And then we can import that. Should be able to import that. Actually, do I need to... First of all, let's do this here. Is there a types library for datefns, or does it come with one? Not sure. The other thing we can do is reload the project. The idea of reloading the project is so that the VS Code can hopefully pick up like the existence of these functions. Seems like it's still not really finding it though. Import from date offense. Yeah, I'm not sure why it didn't catch that it could do that import automatically, but whatever. Okay, so later date is first and earlier date is second. So later date is event.endTime. Earlier date is event.startTime. Oops. And options, let's leave blank for the moment. So this is going to be duration. And this will need to rerun our app. Okay. Then we go over here. Okay, so now see we've got it formatted like this. And the problem is it's too imprecise. So there's a couple problems. What are we doing here? Here we go. So one of the problems is we don't like the word form, like we talked about. The other problem is like, look at this 1 minute thing. So it says 1 minute, but this isn't exactly 1 minute, is it? It's probably somewhere between 1 and 2 minutes or something like that. And we kind of want to see the actual number of seconds in there as well. So there's rounding method, which isn't really what we want. Units. If I do unit second, I wonder what that will do. So now it shows the unit as seconds, but it will never show minutes, it seems, which this isn't really what we want either. So I feel like this method of the library, this function, is not really giving us exactly what we want, and what we actually want is this format duration. The thing about format duration is we're going to need to convert our two dates into a duration. So how do we do that? We've got duration here. How do we generate a duration now? Something like interval to duration is probably how we want it, I think. So instead of this, we're going to do format duration. And now we have the IntelliSense, so it was just taking its time, I guess. And the duration is going to be interval to duration. And this is going to accept a start, which is event.startTime, and end event.endTime. So if we do that without any options, what do we get? So here you see we're getting more what we want, where we actually have like 1 minute, 4 seconds, 1 minute, 8 seconds, etc. Seems good. Now, if if we look at the interval to duration options, not really a lot of options there, which makes sense. If we look at format duration, I wonder how. So we can do delimiter, which would be a space normally, I imagine. Format, which we don't really need to specify. How do I get it to be short? You know? Like, locale, format long. I mean, so distance is what we're wanting to format here. I don't think changing the code would really help. Terms localized distance. What about localize? Weird. So I wonder if there's like a separate short thing. It's only recently that I started using this datafns library, so I'm kind of still learning, but I feel like there must be. There must be some way to short form it, right? I mean, so there's like format. Like if we look at format, yeah, how strange. Okay, well, we might have to do something a little cheeky. Little cheeky here. So I will make a helper function, which we'll call, let's just make a util file date.ts. And we will say export function short duration. And there will be start, date, end, date, and this will return string or null. Null will be if the end date is not a thing. that'll allow us to get rid of this ternary clause here as well. It's kind of the idea. So then this will just be short duration, yep, event dot start time, event dot end time. And okay, those are numbers. That's fine. Date or number, date or number. And then we could say if not end, return null. And then we could say const str equals this business. And we need to import these. I guess I should maybe use the fancier import here. Start. And really, this we can just now use our short form. Start and like that. Okay, and we would return start. Right? The thing is, though, now we actually want to reformat this manually, which is a bit annoying, but fine, I think, to replace the long form values with the equivalent short form values that we want to use. So we're going to do stir.replace, and our search value here is going to be a regex, and that's going to have space seconds, right? Because like if we look over here, yeah, it's interesting that, well, is this automatically pluralized? Like, we see 1 minute, a lot of 1 minute. Seems like there's nothing over 2 minutes. I think we should assume that this could be pluralized. So we put a question mark after the last, like the pluralization indicator. And this will be string S. And here we could do G. Doesn't really matter. Okay, so you see now we've got our S's in there. And we need to do the same thing for all of our other short form values. So, bit annoying. Minutes is M. Hours is H. Days D. Months would be Mo. Now, what's the chance we're going to end up with months of time that somebody spent on a page? Not much, but you know, because the library function can output months, we want to support that just in case, right? Seconds, minutes, hours, days, months, years. I think that should be everything. If we look at what the thing exports here, years, months, oh, weeks. We also need weeks. Weeks. W. Okay. So now we've got our short form syntax here, and that's looking fine. Except for the fact that it's too narrow. The containing element is too narrow. So we have these like things becoming 2 lines when really we want it to be 1 line. So let's widen that a little bit. We've given the whole row some more horizontal space, so we can certainly afford to widen some of the cells in there a little bit. Where does that happen? Oh, so that's complaining because this should also be nullable. Let's just do that. Okay. Okay, so that's this, right? 40 pix. So this would be, if we set that to 80 pix, just refresh the page. Now, you know, it's looking fine. Now, if we did have something super long, like hours, minutes, seconds, etc., it's still going to overflow into 2 lines. Do we want that? I think that's fine for now. Sure. And then let me actually commit this as kind of a unit here. So add data fens and short duration helper. And let's just actually, first of all, let's get rid of those. We don't need any more. And the only thing we really need to stage as part of this is this, and this, and this, and this. Okay, cool. So that's a step. One other thing is I kind of want this NA and no script things to maybe look different as well, because right now these are not very visually, like it's all just too visually the same. I actually wonder if this should just be empty. Or, not sure. I think we kind of want a little tag situation. What do they call it in Shadcn? Is there something that's like a little tag? Label? No. Badge? Yeah, badge. Okay, have we installed badge yet? No. Okay, let's do that. Let's quit this, install badge. Okay, add badge component. So now we can use that over here. So like this NA, we actually want to be a badge. So it would be like this. And probably variant secondary. Let's do though. Oh yeah, got to restart a thing. Refresh the page. Okay, so that's kind of what that looks like. Very bold, too bold, which is why maybe we want that variant secondary on it. And this actually might be destructive, now that I think about it, because really these question marks shouldn't happen often. I don't think that should be a common thing. And for no script, we also want a badge. And this would be like variant, would be maybe this one's secondary. Or maybe that one's also destructive. Destructive. Yeah, I like that. And this would be unknown. And I would actually like this to be secondary, maybe. Yeah, okay. So that's fine. Now, what about first of all, this plus, we kind of want that to look better, right? we want that to be more of a button look to it. So I would probably use an actual button for that. Button. Yep. And then that looks weird for some reason, doesn't it? First of all, this should be variant outline. Why the text is weird, I feel like. You know what I mean? I wonder if I should be within a div here. Because I think it's being affected by the grid layout. And we don't want it to be. Okay, that's right, but not right. Size. Small. And then we're going to want an icon in there as well. I guess we would do size icon. Whoops. Icon. And then this is going to have a minus icon. Or a plus icon. I think those are the same, right? Yeah. How's the square look? Hmm. Okay, so that's kind of how we want that to look, except we want it to be even a little smaller, ideally. And we want it to be obviously centered horizontal or vertically along with the rest of the row, but that's something we can deal with in a moment. And that aspect of it's kind of weird, isn't it? I almost wonder if instead of making this a button, maybe we should just leave it as a div and just use the icons. Let's see what that looks like. I don't know what's up with this runtime error thing. So that seems good, but then we would do minus square and plus square. Okay, how's that look? Very bold. A little too bold. I wonder how that works. Can I adjust these somehow? Like, so there's scale. Is there like a width? Um, hmm. Stroke? Let me see. I haven't really done much with the Lucid thing directly. Gotta copy this. Open it over here. So stroke width is what I want. Okay, stroke width, I think. All right, stroke width 1. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, that's more like what we want here. And I do still feel like it's not quite, like this grid thing is not quite aligning right. I would do like align middle. I don't think that's it. I think it would be like items, items, center, align item center. Or is it justify? I always get align and justify a lot of these things mixed up when it comes to grid stuff. Okay. So let's just look at this real fast. So we've got 24 pixel height. So they're all 24 pixel height. So no matter how we do the alignment, it's not really going to help. It seems like it pretty much is centered too. It's just that the text is not taking up the full vertical height of the box. But that's probably about as good as we're going to get it at the moment. And then I want this to be a different color as well. Color. How do I pick a color? I guess I would do class name probably. And then I could do like text secondary maybe. Class name. Text secondary. Okay, that's a little bit too hard to see. Maybe text secondary foreground. That's pretty much the same as our primary. Hmm. I guess we could just set it explicitly. Like I kind of would want it to be like gray 500 or something. Yeah. Something like that, perhaps. Just to make it look a little more interactive, right? Okay. So the other thing we want to do here, this user ID thing, the 93, like I feel like that's kind of annoying to me. I don't know if that number is really useful at the moment. Ideally, you could even maybe click on it to filter based on user ID, but filtering is something that we still have yet to add. So we kind of just need a way to make it stand off from the date a little bit. And I think for that, I will probably make this like text. I wonder if I did text accent foreground. What is that going to do? Doesn't really do anything. I feel like our accent and secondary and all that stuff for text is like not really set. Yeah, I don't really want to change the color. I do kind of want to underline it though, because it's going to become a link. And then I kind of want it to just have a little more space. I think I want the whole thing to be like a little more space between the different things. Like that. Okay. And then that's probably fine for now. It's really not that much better. One of the things that I should think about as well is what it looks like when it's expanded. So in these expanded sections, I think I'm going to do M2. So that has a little more space like that. And then these things down here, I might actually make badges as well. Badge, variant, outline. Badge, badge, badge. Badge, badge, badge. How does that look? Desktop Linux Chrome. So it looks okay, but now it feels like we need more space on this, right? Like we kind of need MT2. I don't know what's up with this thing that keeps popping up. Unknown HMR script. Not sure. But that's all right. Okay. And then these will be, maybe these should be secondary. Secondary. We definitely don't want them to be primary because that stands out way too much. I like that though. Okay. I mean, it's still far from a perfect page, but it's starting to look a little better. I'm going to do a commit here. Improve UX of events page slightly. Emphasis on slightly. Get rid of the minus and the plus. Don't need those anymore. Okay. Give me a moment. I've got to move my laundry along. Okie doke, we're back. Sorry about that, just trying to get some chores in today. Okay, so let's actually close this mockup. I don't think we're going to need this at the moment. So now I do kind of want to implement pagination for this as well. I feel like that'll be kind of important to have. So what does that look like? Well, we've got our events here. This is all of the events. And these are already preloaded from the server. Eventually, we might want to adjust how that works. But at the moment, we have a hook that just loads all of our events. It's the same hook that we use on the other page for doing analytics. And you can't really paginate your analytics. So in the long run, maybe those analytics should be happening server side. Maybe they should even be happening in the database, but they're not. And so we don't really gain any benefit from adjusting how this use events hook works right now. What we can do is add client side pagination into this component itself. And that's kind of what I want to do right now. So what does that look like? Well, we're going to probably want to introduce another component here. And we will call it event list. Or let's call it event table because we use the row terminology below. And this will accept, let's actually copy this whole thing here. Return stuff. This is event table. And this is going to accept a array of events. And it's going to render those events. So that's going to be like this right here. And do we want this upper div to be, I think we want that to be still up there. Like, yeah, okay. Let's do it like this. Events, events. I guess just like that. Yeah. And then up here, we would do event table, events, sorted events. And I kind of am just trying to keep this broken up into components. Now, the other thing is, we probably want something that's like sorted events. If so, then the event table, otherwise null. But we don't actually want null. Sorted events dot length greater than 0. We kind of want a default state. So let's look at when we have just one day. There's nothing here. That's not really helpful, right? We want a default, what I believe Shadcyan calls an empty state. Yeah. That will just tell the user, you're looking at this page. We don't have any events to show you. And, give a little bit of explanation there instead of it just being inexplicably blank, which is confusing, right? So let's add our empty component here. Sometimes this is also called a non-ideal state, empty. I don't know. The Shadcyan names for these components are they tend to be kind of idiosyncratic, at least compared to the other frameworks that I've used. But let's just let this do its thing. Okay. Add empty component. Okay, so here then this would be, instead of null, we actually have something to render here, right? Which is going to be this. So there's going to be empty My goodness, there's a lot of sub-elements here. So empty and then empty header. Empty header. Empty title. And let's say no events. Let's just see what this looks like. Oh yeah, I've got to rerun the thing again. Doop. Rebuilding the page. Okay, no events. And then we would also have a little description as well. Looks like that's also in the header, which is interesting. Your site hasn't received any traffic within the selected date range. Yeah. And there's no real action you can take here, right? Like sometimes you would be like, oh, you don't have any widgets. And then there would be like a button that's like create a new widget to get started. But in this case, the events are being created from outside this dashboard entirely. There would not be like a create a new event button down here. That doesn't make sense, right? So this is probably all we really need. So let's switch it back to 30 days so we actually have some events. And then now this event table thing, we're going to need to start doing our pagination somehow. So let's just think about that a little bit here. We'll think in code. So we'll have our page size, which let's say 50. And we will have our paginated events equals sorted events dot slice. And we will start at 0 and go to page size. Let's just see. And let's just set this to 2, just to make it nice and obvious what's going on. And down here, we would do this, this, and this. Yeah, so page size is 2. We can see our 2 events here, right? Now, we also need a table. And, or next and previous buttons, I mean, for our table. So let's just make some buttons. We can do button variant ghost, and then size icon, and then this would be like arrow left. I don't know if there's a better icon for these, but it seems fine. And this needs to be this. And then I'll put this probably in a div, because we're going to want to have both buttons in here, and they're going to need to be, well, I'll get to that in a sec. Arrow right. Let's just see what that looks like. So now we have our 2 icons here. So the div, we need a little bit of margin, right? Class name, MT2. And we also are going to make this a flex. And That's fine. And then we might as well just put a div in here as well. That's like class name flex 1. So now we've got our left and right arrows on both sides of the table here, which don't do anything. So I'm clicking on it right now. It doesn't do anything, right? So what are they going to do? Well, in order for them to actually do something, we need a piece of state. So let's write that. We're going to have our page set page equals use state 0. I think we'll do a 0 indexed page maybe. See how that feels. And so then we're going to start here at page times page size, and we're going to count page size thingies. So initially this will be 0. When page is 1, then we'll go to the next page, right? I think that should work. And then these buttons need to be hooked up. So let's add our callbacks for those. So handle next page equals use callback. Page or set page and page, I guess. Well, we could just do set page. Okay. So then this will call set page, page, page plus plus. Right? So this is going to increment the page. And then we're going to do the same thing for handle previous page. Page minus minus. And you might think, oh, if we call this enough times, we're going to get a negative page. And we don't want to allow that. And that's true. But inside this function is not where we're going to add that validation. We're actually just going to disable these buttons if there's not another page in whatever direction. On click, handle next page. On click, handle prev page. And we'll say disabled equals has next page. And we'll do the same thing down here. Has prev page, right? And we could say has next page. Let's just start with this as true. And has prev page. And prev page is easy because this is only true. Like you always have a previous page as long as page is greater than 0. Right? Simple as that. The next page one is a little more complicated to think about. So there's a next page if paginated events doesn't have the end of the array. So if page times page size plus page size is not greater than sorted events.length or something like that. So it would be like page plus 1 times page size is less than sorted events.length. Yeah. And I kind of wonder if we want to move this into its own component as well, or even move it into the event table component itself down here. That doesn't need a question mark. Kind of like that actually. So let's do that. And just the reason for that is just because that way we can assume in this whole function that events is present and accounted for, you know. And also, I mean, it moves the page state one component deeper. Not that that necessarily matters, but and then these, and then this, and then this becomes sorted events. And then this can be div for the page, and then another div for those things. Okay. Okay, so now this events table includes the pagination buttons in the actual component itself, right? And this is going to be paginated events.map. And I did that wrong. This actually needs to be like this. Return div, then this, then this goes in here, and this div goes away. Oh, and this needs bracket around it. Yeah, like that. Okay, and so I think that should work, but I'm worried that I might have some kind of off by one things going on here. It can be kind of hard to think through some of these math around zero index things. So say we have 100 events and our page size is 50. At first, has next page is going to be equal to 0 plus 1 times page size, which is 50, which is less than events.length. But this, if we click the plus button and go to the next page, then we have page plus 1, so that's 2 times page size, which is 100, which is not less than events.length. But if events.length was, say, 101, then it would be. And then you would go to the next page and there would just be 1. And I should double check. Like if I do 1, 2, 3 dot slice 110, yeah, it just goes to the end of the array, even though I'm selecting beyond it. So that is what we want. Okay. So I think that should work, right? So if I click next, it's not actually doing anything. Why not? Oh, well, first of all, these are backwards. Okay. But now the next has previous page. Why is that? Oh, this needs to be negated because it's disabled, not enabled. Okay, so now that's disabled. This is enabled. I should be able to click it and go to the next page, but that's not working. Set page. I think the plus plus should work, right? Didn't work. Okay. Okay, so first of all, this seems weird. And then this is complaining about how I need a key. So let's fragment key I. And then, so what's going on here? Boop. Site select. Okay, so that's not actually to do with the thing we just did. Interesting. Boop. So I click next. Console.log page. Why? What's going on here? If I click next, page becomes 1. And slice, it doesn't mutate, right? No. So why is that empty? Is it, am I forgetting how slice works? Okay, the end index. So I think, yeah, okay. So I actually need to do page times, or page plus 1 times page size. Refresh. Okay, so now it is finding more. The problem here might actually be this key now. This should be maybe event.id. No. Okay, if I click this again, we got some new events. So why are they not rendering now? Kind of wonder if I should make another subcomponent. It shouldn't really matter, but I was kind of thinking of doing this anyway, so maybe it'll make it simpler. And we will call this paginated event table. And then we'll make a regular event table. And we're actually going to copy this, put it down here. And this is going to be this basically. Return events, like so. And then this is going to be our event table. All right, fix that. Event table, events equals paginated events. I wonder if that's going to fix it or not. No, it doesn't. Which makes sense, but I like it this way better in terms of how it's factored. So what is the problem here? As usual, it's probably just something dumb that I'm missing. So page is a state. When we increment page, it's going to cause this whole function to execute again. Paginated events is going to be recalculated based on events, it's going to be a different object. Oh, okay. It's because I'm an idiot. As usual, it's because I'm an idiot. So the problem here is that I updated the logic in my console.log, but not in my actual variable. So smart. Now we can switch between them and we can go through the pages. And if I do set this now to 50, you know, it's like this. And maybe I should set this to 25. 25. Do, 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 do. Very nice, right? And maybe I should have some text in the center of the thing here that actually says like, to of events.length. Viewing 0 to 25. If I hit next, 25 to 50. I mean, I shouldn't need to count these because I tested with 2. But I don't really like that it's like 0 to 25. It should be the first event through the 25th event. And then if I go all the way up to the final thing here, it should be, this should say something like max or math.max this and events.length. Right, so now I can go all the way to the end and it will say viewing, or no, I always get math, max and min kind of confused in cases like this. We want minimum because we're clamping the value to a certain maximum, confusingly. So now it's viewing 301 to 305, 301, 302, 303, 304, 305. Okay, great. Now, this, you know, obviously we want text or text center. Yeah. And then we want it to be also align middle, not align middle, items center. Is that right? So now that's kind of like, yeah, something like that. Okay. And actually, I want this on top of the event table. Like that. Yeah. And then we're going to put this margin MT2 becomes MB2. Okay. Seems good, right? Seems okay. Let's go ahead and commit this. Add client-side pagination to events page. Great. So another thing I want to add on this page is filtering. Okay. So what does that mean? It means I want the user to be able to filter to only a given user ID or only a given URL or only a given host name or whatever, you know. So we're going to add some drop downs along the top to choose values to filter based on. And you'll be able to choose any value in the visible data set. So this is something that I'm trying to decide if it should filter on everything. Yeah, okay. So what I was trying to think about, oops, let's actually amend my commit here so we don't have that console log in there. Okay. What I was thinking about is for this values for the drop downs, do I want them to include only what's visible on the current page or everything that's visible, you know, in all 305 events? And I think I want to do the latter. So what that means is that we're actually going to be basing the drop-down values on the whole array of events, which means that probably we will put this on top of, like in the events page itself, and we'll pass a filtered list of events into the paginated event table. Yes. So and maybe we want to wait to sort them too until after. Like maybe this should be down here sorting the events, you know? And then this would be paginated events would be sorted events dot slice. But I don't like that because then we're resorting them each time. So let's actually not do that. The problem with that is every time we re-render this component, it's going to redo the sorted events. And we could put it in a memo, like a use memo to prevent that from being resorted each time, but let's just leave it up here for now. Should be okay. And kind of the idea then is we're going to add some filters. So what do we want the filters to look like? They're just going to sit on top here. They're going to use this same drop-down style. So let's actually look at the Shadcn drop-down menu thing here. I want a selecty type. Oh, maybe that's actually not called drop-down menu. That's a select. Yeah, okay. Select. So up here, we're going to have inside this thing that only shows if we actually have events, right? We're going to have a select. And then in there, there's going to be, and I'll put these selects in a div actually. And within the select, we have a select trigger, right? And then in there, a select value. No, that should be coming from here. Yeah. Ooh. And then we would have our select content. Select group. Kind of complicated, isn't it? Do we need a group? Let's look at how we did it for our site dropdown. Site select. Yeah, so here we don't have a group. I think we can just put items. So then we would do our select items. And what are those items? So this is where we're going to need to do a little more analysis, right? So let's do this all in one loop. So we could say like const, let's start with users. Const user IDs equals array. And then we could do for const event of events. And maybe we should make this a set actually. New set. If event dot user ID, I guess there should always be one. So we could really just say user IDs dot add event dot user ID, right? And then this select value placeholder user ID. And then this would be user IDs dot map ID select item value ID. And I guess we could define this as a set of number, right? Because user ID is a number. Oh no, it's a string. It's a string. Just a number in a string. And then, oh yeah, this needs to be like dot keys. I guess I could say dot values. Doesn't really matter. Right? I think that is right. Let's see what we've got now. So user ID, if I click that, there's nothing in there. Okay. Why is there nothing in there? I wonder if you can map over an iterable at all. Is that even a thing? The other thing I wonder is maybe I need some actual text in here. Like that. Okay, still not working. Let's see. Let s equal new set. S dot add 1 to 3. S dot values dot map v plus 1. Yeah, so that's not actually doing what I really want. I kind of want to do array.from, I guess. Creates an array from an array-like object. Can I call that right on the set? I can. Okay, so now we've got all these user IDs. Now, this is weird, isn't it? We just have all these numbers in here. Isn't that strange? It is strange. But that's all our user IDs are. I don't know if there's really a way to avoid this for now. The idea that it's just a bunch of like exactly 100 numbers is because of the way our test set works, but just got our numbers. And maybe we want to improve that in the future, but for now, we don't have anything but the number to identify a user as. It'll look a little better for our other selects though. Okay. So, and for this one, we would say something like class name width 12. That's too narrow. 24. Yeah, something like that. Okay. And then let's wire this up, right? So in order to do that, we need let's look at our other select here. So on the select, we need a value and an on change. Value on change. And the value, like here, we're going to need some state, right? So we need like const filtered user ID, set filtered user ID equals use state null, and this will be string or null. That would be that. Or undefined, I guess. We'll just use the same thing here yeah. And then on value change, now I'm just going to do a handler, const handle change filtered user ID equals use callback. Boop, boop, boop. Right? And so this is going to do set filtered user ID, new ID. And new ID is going to be a parameter to the callback. And then this will just do this. Right? And so now, oh, this needs that. Yep. So then we would have something else here where it would be like, I might have this sorted thing do a use memo deal, actually. Anyway, use memo. So what is use memo? This is a React hook, obviously, that allows you to memoize a value. And let me just finish writing this before I talk about that a little more. Events. So what that means is that this function here, will only be re-executed when this changes. Okay? So the advantage of that is it's not going to rerun this. It's not going to recalculate this sorted events array each time we re-render the component. Because now, each time that we select a new value or something like that, it's going to have to re-render this whole component because of our use state calls. And that sorted events would be rerun each time. And, it probably doesn't really matter, but it's technically probably like an O n log n algorithm, right? So it has to run n log n steps per n elements of the array. Not necessarily something we want to have to do each time if our array is really big. It might even be worse time than O n log n. I don't know. Whereas something like changing the filters is O n. So it's a little bit better. Now, does this really matter? Probably not, but it just makes more sense to put expensive stuff in a memo so you don't have to worry about it. I kind of like to do it anyway. So then we're going to do I guess this should still be running on that. Yeah. And so then we're going to calculate a const filtered events equals sorted events dot filter event so if there is a filtered user ID and the event dot user ID is not equal to the filtered user ID, we're going to return false. Otherwise, we're going to return true. And then this filtered events is what's going to be passed instead of sorted events here. And what are you complaining about? The fact that that could be undefined? No. Oh yeah, because, well, yeah, whatever. Okay. And with the selected filters. Let's do that. Filters and date range. Fine. And we'll call this no matching events. Okay, so now I should be able to select a user ID and it'll be filtered to only the events with that user ID. Very nice. The other thing we need is a way to clear this value, right? So I wonder if there's a way to do that. Like an input group? I kind of think maybe input group is the thing we want here. Let's add that. Button already exists. Would you like to overwrite? No. No. Add input group. So can I do an input group with a select? Is the question which maybe I should have answered before I installed it. But let's see. So we would want something kind of like this top one, where it's got a button in there. So there's input group, and then input group input. I wonder if that's going to work with a select. I might not. Let's just see. Input group. And then we would put the select in. And then we would have our input group add-on, which would be a button. Here's an example with a button like this. Yeah. Add on align inline end. Input group button. Size, icon, S, seems fine. And then we would have an icon that's an X. Now it's probably going to be all kinds of messed up. Yeah. Input group input. What does that do? Okay, it doesn't like that at all. What if I do as child? Can I do that on this? No. Okay, so probably the input group is not going to work with the select, which is a little annoying, but fine. Instead, I might need to maybe just have an empty value in the select. I kind of wanted to have like an X next to it. And I could still do that. It just might be a bit of a pain. I might do just like select item value undefined, because that's what this could be. No. I guess it would be like that. Fine. And this would just be like string, and this would be an empty string. And that works because the empty string is falsy, so this conditional will still do the right thing. And what is it complaining about? I mean, I know that. That's what I wanted to do. Okay. How do I do that then? Select. Oh, that's interesting, actually. Ba -ba. How does a scrollable one work? Looks like it just works. Okay. Doesn't that seem kind of weird though? So it won't let me create an empty item. But it wants me to have an empty item here. So do I need to use a sentinel value for that? Because that's kind of annoying, right? Like theoretically you could do like empty. right? And then here, there's like the any user option. Oh, actually, that's a flaw. I just noticed. So if you set a filter that doesn't match anything, then the filters actually go away. Okay, we'll have to deal with that later. So maybe I will just have like an X next to it, just as like a separate button. Button, style, ghost, or variant, I mean. And size, icon, and X. So now there's this little X button. And this would be like on click. We'd have another thing here. It's like handle clear filtered user ID. Having to put in these callbacks is kind of annoying. Technically, I don't need to. But it's theoretically better for performance. So now, like I can select da da da, and then I can click X, and that unselects it. And this only really needs to show, or let's say it should be disabled if filtered user ID, if not filtered user ID. So now it's disabled. If I select a user ID, then I can click the X button. Great. Okay, so this thing feels like it wants to be made into its own component. So let's do that. Let's make a new component here. And I might put this actually on its own page. Let's make a new file. We can call it like filter select.tsx. Export const filter select react.fc something react.with props with children equals, I think there's going to be children, right? Maybe not. Return that. And what are you complaining about? Oh yeah, okay. That would be like that. And then this JSX expressions must have, right, okay. Actually want them to be in a div. Okay. So then we would have these things going in here. And we'll just call these like filtered or selected. Selected, set selected. New state. Handle change. And handle clear. Set selected, set selected, do. Okay. And then these add import from that, and then add all missing imports. Yeah. And that, I don't know why that imported it as a type. I wanted to import the actual thing. Selected. Maybe I'll call this value actually. Set value. handle change, handle clear, not value. And then this is also going to get a few props. It's not actually going to have any children. The props are going to be items, which can just be an array of string. Let's do this way, actually. Array, label, string, value, string. And yeah, that's fine. So then this down here is going to be items.map. And this will have a label and a value. Label, value. Okay. And then this will also have on change function that accepts a v string and does something with it. And so like this handle change now is going to call that function. Or really we could do it in an effect, but I'm going to do it this way. New ID. On change. Okay. Right. So, and then this would be div class flex row flex no wrap. Oh yeah. Okay. So now we need to update this to use that. So instead of this div here, we're going to keep the div, but we're going to do a filter select. And I guess we should make this controlled, maybe. Do we want to make it controlled? Yeah, let's make it controlled. Value, string. So then we don't actually need this. Like that. Yeah. Okay. So here value is going to be filtered user ID. Filtered user ID, which of course I took out. Const filtered user ID. Set filtered user ID equals use state. Filtered user ID, and then on change is just literally going to be set filtered user ID. And then we also need our items, which is going to be array dot from user IDs dot map v label v value v. Okay, I think that's right. So now we've got our thing. You know, we select 4, filters them all to the 4. You click X, goes away. Now, I really wish that these looked better. I wonder if I can use a button group. Yeah, like this. Button group. And then maybe that'll work. Let's try that. Add button group. Nope. Nope. Add button group. Okay, so now in the filter select, I wonder if I can do, so this here would be a button group actually. And get rid of those classes. And then what? Is that it? Yeah, so it does look better now. The only thing is the button probably should be variant outline. Yeah. Yeah, okay. That's kind of what I want here. Cool. Okay, so that's good. So now we kind of want to do the same thing for our other filters here, right? So let's do that. And this div, class name, flex, flex row, flex wrap, gap 2. Let's actually do gap 4. So these are going to be our different filters kind of flowing along here. And then we should also have a placeholder parameter here. Placeholder user ID. Because that's going to need to vary. Yep. Okay. So the second one here is going to be what? Like we could do these 3 things, desktop, Linux, Chrome, right? So let's kind of just start doing this in bulk here. So we're going to have filtered browser, set filtered browser. Oops, filtered browser. And maybe I don't really want to keep typing filtered. So maybe I'll just call these like user ID, set user ID, browser, set browser, user agent, or no, not user agent, device, set device, OS, set OS, and hostname, set hostname, refer, set refer, and finally we're going to have URL, set URL. So those are going to be our different filters, right? And then down here, we're going to add those to this kind of like right? If browser and event.browser is not equal to browser, if device and event.device not equal to device, etc. OS event.o operating system hostname refer and URL. Okay. So we've got our filters in place. Now we just need to make selects for them. So we've got user ID, we've got browser, which would be browser, set browser, and we'll need to do these items as well. Let's do those too. Forgot. Okay. User IDs. Browsers, devices, OSs, hostnames, refers, URLs, right? So then down here, we're going to do the same thing where it's like browsers dot add event dot browser, devices dot add event dot device type, OSs dot add event dot operating system. This kind of cries out for some type of abstraction to avoid having to duplicate this, but it sort of feels like it would get needlessly complicated because we're really not going to be needing to add these in the future very much. Like we're not going to have new types of data that we want to filter on. So I'm just going to type this out by hand here. And then here, so here we have something interesting where it's like if event.refer, then do that. If event.hostname, then do that. Like that. Okay. Okay, so now we can do this items array.from blah, blah, blah browsers, right? And we can kind of replicate that all through the list here. So browser, device type, device, set device, devices. Let's just put in a few more of these. Browser, device type, OS, OSs, set OS, OS. Hostname, value, hostname, set hostname, hostnames. And refer, set refer, refer, refers, and URL is the last one. URL, URL, URLs, set URL. Okay, great. Right? And theoretically, these values should be something else, though. I wonder, I don't know if I have, like, let's look at Windows Phone. Yeah, so I don't have anything that maps these to display strings. I kind of want that. I guess I'll put that in here. Export function. What would we call it? Like browser label v browser type. Return v equals edge, something like that. But let me do it as an object, I guess. So it would be like this. Edge, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, other, v. Like that. And we would do the same thing for operating system label. And device type label. One sec. Okay, I had to do my laundry again. Alrighty, so device type label. Yeah, okay. So now we need to fill these out. So device type is easy. That's mobile, desktop, other, right? Mobile, desktop, other, which we already had. Mobile, desktop. And you might be thinking, why don't you just capitalize them? Like, why don't you just take whatever the label is and capitalize the first letter, and then you're getting the label. Like take the value, capitalize it, you get the label. But there's some that that's not true for. Examples are like iOS or OS X or Windows Phone. Like the human readable description of these is not like that, right? That's not right. It's that. And so we need to, in order to handle every case, we kind of need to create these lookup tables. So Windows, Linux, Android, iOS, OS X, Windows, And this one will need to quote Windows Phone and other. Yeah, so Windows, of course, Linux, Android, iOS, OS X, Windows Phone, other, like that. Great, so now we have these lookups. We can reuse them wherever we need to show these values to the user. We're actually going to want to use those in the badges in the table as well. But for starters, we're going to do them here. So, or here, yeah. So like for browsers, the value is going to be browser, or what is it called? Label. Browser label. It's not auto-completing it for me. Why not? I don't know. Okay, and then device. It would be device label. B, like that. And this would be operating system label V. And this would be hostname. Or no, that doesn't have a thing. That's just V. Yeah. Okay, and so these are complaining because technically this should be browser type, device type, and operating system, like that. Okay, so now, we have all these selections here, and really, I guess let's just make this a little wider for now. And device, I'll just call it device so it fits. Oh, I did these backwards. Okay, awesome. Awesome. The value should be V. The label should be the label version. How did I get parentheses around that? I don't know. Let's just do this. Yeah, like that. So now, if I select edge, it's filtered to only edge ones. So now the other thing is if I expand that and look in here, first of all, these don't make any sense, but whatever. That's just randomly generated. But apparently this came from Edge on a desktop, which is also running iOS. Go figure. So these badges I want to also be using the display label. So let's actually commit this first though. So add filters for, and I just noticed we have got like a bunch of empty imports or unused imports we can get rid of. Yeah. Yeah, seems to be working. Just making sure that these are all actually working. Yeah, okay, great. So we will call this add filters for events page. Great. Okay, so now let's update those badges. That's going to be down here. We've got our badges. And this would be like device type label, device type, operating system label, operating system, and browser label. So now we actually get the human readable names for these things, which is better, right? Okay. Use labels for event type badges. Commit. Great. So the next thing I want to do is fix the filtering issue. Although I'm thinking about it and I'm like, actually, it's going to be pretty hard because these are all drop downs. It's technically going to actually be impossible to get yourself in a situation where you're filtering based on something that's not going to return any results, because all of these should return some result. Theoretically, like if I did that and switched to look back, but then that kind of refreshes the whole thing. So but it could. So let me say this. We're going to have two empty states. One is if you have no events. In the selected date range. And the other is if you have some events, but, and so this is actually going to be based on events. And then the other one is if you have some events, but the filter doesn't match anything. And here's where we would do the paginated table. Not that, it would be that. Otherwise, we'd have another empty state here. Your filters are not matching any events. Like that. Yeah. Okay. So now we have the two states. Theoretically, you know, if I switch to this, I get this no events. If I don't really know how to test the other state. But let's just assume that it works. Okay. Okay, so we're going to do something here where it's like use different empty state or filters when filters don't match. Sure. Okay, so we're making some progress on this page here. One thing too, I want the refer to be above, just for aesthetic purposes. I want the refer to be above the user agent. So let's find one that has a refer. And then the refer is above the user agent. That looks a little better to me. So the other thing is, like this user ID, the reason I made this underline in the first place is because I want this to actually be clickable. Do we have like, is there like a link? Not really. It doesn't really need to be. Okay. On click. This would basically be, I mean, okay. I'm just going to do it like this for now. Set user. Oh, but this is in the event row. It's kind of a bit of a pain. Yeah, let's just not worry about that for now. In which case, let's get rid of the underline. What I was thinking is if you had the ability to click on it, it would automatically filter you to that user ID. And I do kind of like that idea. But the thing is, if you do it for the user ID, then you kind of want to do it for everything else too. And maybe that's totally fine. The problem is, how do you just need a bunch of hooks in here, or like callbacks, which is a bit annoying, but that's okay. On user click the string void. And then we would also have on URL click. Let's just start with those two. So this would be underline, or just underline? Yeah. On click, on user click. And let's actually do it like this. On user click event.user ID. So there's two options here. One option is we can pass through this value from the subcomponent like this. The other option is this could just call onUserClick, which would just be like that, because the parent component knows the user of the event, theoretically. But I kind of want to do it this way, I think, because that way the parent component doesn't have to check event.userID. I don't know. It just, so for example, let me do the event.url one too. So this we would also do underline to make it clear that it's clickable. And this would be on URL click event.url, right? So now up here, we would theoretically be able to do on URL click and now's when I feel irritated by having all of these subcomponents. But I'm actually going to need to do this here. right? And this here, events, and then this just gets, these just get passed through into here, which really I could do like handlers. And then this could be ... handlers. And then I could do the same thing up here. Events, ... handlers. Events, ... handlers. And really, I might even do... Well, this is fine for now. And then here we would do on URL click, set URL. On user click, set user. And so then that's the nice thing here is because these are being called with the IDs right in there, we can just call the set function directly. And that should work in theory. So if I click on the 93, it filters to 93. If I click on the AA, it filters to the AA. Right? Interesting that there's only one from user 93. Yeah. Okay, so that's a thing. Now, I don't like the underlines though. I might just get rid of those. There's probably a better way to visually indicate that these are clickable. But for now, I think this is okay. Another thing I'm going to add a filter for actually is the no script functionality. So first of all, let me commit this. So we're going to say allow clicking on user or URL to set filter. So then I'm going to have something up here as well where it's going to be const no script set no script use state boolean or false or null. I guess this one's going to be actually let's do false, and this will just be a boolean. Well, I kind of want it to be another filter select though, so actually let's not do it that way. I'll have to adjust that. No script, no script, set no script. And this is actually going to just be two fixed values. There's going to be value no, label script. I don't really know what to call that one. Value yes, label no JavaScript. Maybe I'll call this JavaScript and that no JavaScript. And actually, maybe I'll have these be yes and no. And this would be has JS, that has JS. Right? So then up here we would call this has JS and set has JS. And this is either going to be yes or no or null. And it's going to be null for now, or empty string for consistency. Okay. So then here we would say like if has.js equals yes, and event dot is no script, return false. If has.js no and not event dot no script, return false. Right? So if we're filtering to things with JS and it's no script, that gets filtered out. If we're filtering things without JS and it doesn't have no script, then it gets filtered out. Make sense? Kind of. And then this, I mean, I'll just make it a string. It doesn't need to have that special type to it. Okay, so now in theory I should be able to select JavaScript or no JavaScript, and then both. Great. So now let's make the no script thing clickable as well. On no script click. On no script click. And then we put the same thing up here, put the same thing up here. And so this will be clicked, triggered when somebody clicks on the no script badge. On click, on no script click, right? And then while we're at it, we might as well also add on browser click, which is going to be this. On operating system click, on device type click. And those go here, and they go here. Yes. Okay. So naturally, those are going to go down here on these badges as well, right? On click, on device type. Oh yeah, I need to add those into my thing here. Browser click, operating system click, device type click. And maybe this will also be v string, actually. Yeah. And then this will be do da da da. Yes. Or no, I mean, no. Okay. On device type click, event.device type, right? We'll do the same thing here and here. Operating system, on operating system click. And this is on browser click, browser, operating system, device type. Great. Okay, so now these are kind of wired up here. No script click, user click. A lot of tomfoolery going on in this page, but that's okay. So then up here in our this thing, we would say like on no script click, set has.js, on browser click, set browser, on device type click, set device type. On operating system, click set OS. Right? So now we should be able to, and kind of another thing I want to do here is like, I think there's a loading state. Is loading. And I'm going to have another thing here where it's like, is loading. If it's loading, then do something else. Otherwise, do this. What are you complaining about? Yeah, okay. So now if I refresh it, it should say loading instead of saying no data at the beginning there. Okay, so now I should be able to click on, that does nothing. If I click on no script, it'll do the filter. If I click on desktop, it'll do the filter. If I click on Linux, it'll do the filter. If I click on Chrome, it'll do the filter. And probably those should now become pressable looking, which means, I mean, I could make them buttons, or I could just do something more sneaky. Pointer. Cursor. Pointer. Desktop. Ba-ba, ba-ba. Yeah, very nice. And then I guess I could do the same thing for host name and refer, but what? Let's just do that. On host name, click. On refer, click. Ba-ba-ba. Oops. On refer, click. Okay. And then these two things are going to go here. Okay. And then up here, we get our on hostname, click, set hostname. On refer, click, set refer. Yes. And then here, then I guess we just, for now, we're going to do this. Cursor pointer, text, underline, just underline. On click, on hostname, click, event.hostname, like that. Says that event hostname can possibly be null. I don't know when that could ever be null, but let's just not render this at all if it's null. Event.hostname. Yeah. So in this case, we know it's a string. This should really just now work. Okay, and then same thing for refer. So we take these two things, put them in here, format, refer, on refer, click. Yeah, great. Okay, so now our host name and refer should be clickable. If I click this, boop, filters the host name. Everything is the same host name, so that doesn't do anything. If I click refer, boop, it filters to only things with that refer. Okay. So what did we do on this commit? Allow clicking on, allow filtering on no script, also clicking on other things to filter. Fine. Alrighty. I think that's probably about it for me today. Oh, I feel like we made some pretty good progress on this page. I really wish, I mean, the UX still, like the actual visual appearance still needs some improvement, but the functionality is a lot more along the lines of where I'd like it to be with the pagination and the filtering. And the UX is improved a little bit. So I think we're going to be satisfied. Let me push my changes. And that'll be all. Thanks, all. See you later.